I've fallen off my Japanese practice a bit lately, with life getting in the way, but now my schedule is beginning to get back into shape. So I want to get back into it, and I'm doing so the best way I know how, which is by doing stupid challenges! First, a quick disclaimer, this is not an advice video. I do not suggest doing this. Rushing the language learning process in general is a bad idea. If you rush it, you're more likely to just forget real quick. Small but consistent work over a longer period of time is much more likely to pay off. I'm just doing this as a way to get me back into studying. Plus, the way I learn is likely very different from the way you learn, because everyone learns differently. A lot of people do not like my learning style. You've just got to work out what works best for you, and don't just do what works for other people. So the challenge has to have some measures. On the Tuesday, I'm going to be starting the challenge with an N5 practice test on Bunpro, and then the Tuesday after, I'm going to be taking another N5 practice test just to see if my score improves at all. First though, I've got to get started on a vague plan. The problem with the way that I learn is that I like to learn a lot of vocab and kanji without actually getting much practice in full sentences. In this challenge, although I'll still be doing my regular spaced repetition vocab and kanji practice, I'll be trying to focus on forming and understanding full sentences a little better. For guidance, let's go get a textbook. Luckily, I found this bookshop in Shinjuku by the Takayashimaya building with a lot of books for English speakers, including plenty of textbooks. Since it's the N5 I'm trying to improve on here, I'm going to get one of these N5 textbooks. It took me about an hour being overwhelmed and frankly spoiled for choice before I decided to get this one. My plan is to get through as much of this textbook as I can in the duration of this challenge, writing any new words I learn onto these flashcards I found at the secondhand store, and adding any new kanji I learn to my Anki deck and kanji book. Flashcards are something I can do on my commute, which is always helpful. Next, I found this notebook at another secondhand store. This shall be my language journal for the next week, in which I'll write the new words I've learned, the new grammar points I've encountered, and to practice output, I'll write a few sentences about my day. Obviously, the first part of day one was taking the first N5 practice test, which I did between a couple classes in the morning. I will say I have already learned something from this, and that is that I will need to get so much caffeine in me if I ever want to take a JLPT exam, lest I take micro naps during the listening section. I had to step out and go for a walk and get a drink during that, but promptly returned and picked up where I left off. And it's a good job I did get that bit of fuel, because the last parts were the most difficult. Picking the appropriate phrases in different situations. A lot of times, multiple answers would make sense as responses depending on further context, so it's about finding what the person making the exam would think is most appropriate. And I hate that. So these were my initial results. Ignoring the time during the listening, it wasn't that bad at 71%, but there's plenty of room to improve, and I want to see how much improvement I can get in this 1 week. The first post-test step for day one was to go through the answers, see what I got wrong, and find out why. In the vocab section, my kanji was no problem. As I expected, my problem has instead been with the missing words and rewording sentences. And all of those problems were because I didn't recognize words I would normally see in kanji when written in hiragana. I really need to work on that, because I need to figure out how to recognize words by their sound rather than their kanji, because that'll be why my listening sucks so much. The grammar and reading section, aka my worst section, was largely me misunderstanding or not paying attention to the larger context. So I need to get to grips with reading a full paragraph in Japanese rather than just taking little bits of sentences and assuming I know what it's referring to from that. I did also find grammar structures and some vocab that I didn't know, so I will be adding that to my language journal. Finally, the listening practice wasn't as bad as I thought. There were a lot of traps laid out. For example, one question asked about how many pages a student read at home, and in the dialogue she said she had read page 10 at school and to page 20 at home. so I misunderstood that as her having read 20 pages at home. The big thing is that I've learned to listen to the whole thing carefully and to do so twice before answering. So having done that, I hopped over to my Wanikani for a bit, since the reviews had piled up throughout the weekend, before taking a first look at my shiny new textbook. The formatting of the textbook took a little while to get the hang of, but I spent my last half hour of desk warming at work going through that and getting the first lesson done. It was only after work that things started to go a bit downhill. I tried to put on an N5 podcast whilst on my way home, but even in English, I can't focus on podcasts and simultaneously navigate my way through the crowds of central Tokyo. When I finally got home, I had a pile of housework to do that lasted until dinner arrived, so it got to about 9 PM before I was able to actually do anything. Sleep is important for learning, so I do not plan on pulling any all-nighters or staying up late no matter how little time I have in the evenings. I feel like that'd just be a bit counterproductive. I quickly added my new vocab to the flashcards and added my first entry to my language journal. It was less than expected and I didn't manage to do any writing practice, but hopefully we'll have more to add on day 2. Day 2 was my first experience of doing this challenge on my morning commute, during which the trains are a lot more cramped. I listened to a podcast whilst walking to the station where it's less busy, switched to my kanji cards and my new flashcards whilst on the train, and put them away to watch a practice listening video when it got busier. The 30-minute walk between the station and work, I honestly just gave up. There's no way I can focus on anything while dodging cars and people left and right, so that's just going to have to be me time left alone. Not to mention, even if you are cramming for a test, if you try and cram every second of the day with information, none of that's going to be absorbed, so I decided I'd leave that walk as my quiet time. Not that it can be described as quiet. Wednesday is the least busy day of the week for me, so I figured I'd do my Wanikani and Bunpro reviews and then go back through my textbook for a bit. My reviews took me all the way into the mid-afternoon between spots of actual work I had to do, but I learned a few new grammar points through my Bunpro, such as how to say something is too much something, which feels useful. My commute back was pretty productive actually. I watched this video by Kensa no Kaeri and took screenshots whenever an unfamiliar word or grammar structure cropped up. More often than not, it was a word I knew that had been conjugated to sound completely unfamiliar to me, but at the very least, it's good to know that that's a weakness of mine so I can practice it. When I got home, I had a lesson with an online tutor. We usually just go through like gym terms together so that I can make friends at the gym, but I asked today if we could go through an M5 practice test together, and yeah, it went really well. I think it was really useful, and at the very least it helped me feel a lot more comfortable with the structure of the exam. I had a little more housework to do before dinner, but after that I got to work on my language journal for the day. I managed to write a lot more than I had the day before, but I still didn't get to my writing practice piece at the end. It had gotten late again, and I was beginning to feel a little unwell, so I had to head to bed. But at least I got quite a lot of new words and grammar structures under my belt. Thursdays, my partner has a 3 AM D&D game, so with the heating already on in the morning, it meant I could get ready for work a lot faster, so I left a little early to treat myself to breakfast out at the cafe, where I could work through my textbook for a little while whilst eating breakfast. At work I had quite a busy morning, so whilst waiting for my lunch to heat up in the microwave, I figured I would try some Japanese conversation skills practice with my co-workers. So I had a chat with one of the part-time teachers. This conversation started with me telling her that her calligraphy was very cool, and it ended with her handing me a middle school calligraphy textbook and telling me to study for next week. I don't know what happened in the middle of that conversation. I did not understand that much, but apparently I am now studying calligraphy. I don't know exactly what I'm studying for. Be fun to find out. After lunch, I had a couple hours free before home time, so I worked up to lesson 7 of the textbook and learned a bunch new grammar structures from asking around the office what things mean. My poor co-workers have been subjected to so much questioning this week, and I'm really grateful to have that option. I'm going to have to make some little thank you gifts for my very helpful co-workers. The hardest thing about this challenge for me is that I have very little time in the evenings, and I usually spend that time at the gym. For the duration of this challenge, I'm not allowed to do my weightlifting, which has felt very weird. So for day 3, I treated myself to a little bit of time in the gym, though doing only cardio because I found an excellent video to help me practice my listening skills whilst on the treadmill. This video actually used super simple Japanese. Many of these types of practice videos are a lot harder, so I think this channel is actually a brilliant place to start, and they actually seem to have fun filming them. I did learn one thing on day 3 that will always stick, and that's that the kanji used in the word economy mean passage of time and come to an end. This is why I love kanji so much. It's the same as the day before, where I learned that sashimi is stab body. Kanji can be very interesting sometimes. Day 3 was the most productive day yet, but I still hadn't managed to do any writing practice. It always gets too late by the time I've written all my new grammar and vocab into my language journal, and I had some new kanji to add to my kanji notebook that day as well. The writing task is probably the least important thing for the N5, thankfully, so I figured this was just going to have to be a weekend challenge. Hitting the midpoint of the challenge, day 4 did not start out great. I was feeling sick all morning, and although I only had 2 work-related tasks to do before lunch, they took up way more time than expected. I got to work a little early, so I found 20 minutes of peace and quiet to work through my textbook before the morning meeting. That's 7 lessons down, 4 to go. The textbook did not last as long as I'd hoped, honestly, but I think it still helped a lot. I grumbled my way through my reviews, along with some extra studying of the grammar points I came across on Bunpro, particularly trying to get a better grasp on the too much grammar point that I learned on day 2. Grammar is, and I fear always will be, my biggest weak point, and it will require a lot of work. After lunch, I had a lot more actual work to do and had to do a bit of overtime, so I didn't get a chance to do much more than that until I headed to a cafe for dinner on my way home and completed up to lesson 10 there. I also read some practice easy Japanese news articles on my way home, and noticed that I have actually improved my ability to read the pronunciations and comprehend the meaning of what I'm reading simultaneously, which is a really good sign, because that is a major weak point of mine and a very, very useful skill to have when learning a language. Since a lot of what I did on day 4 was textbook work, I didn't have many new words or grammar points to add to the journal, but I think I did do as much as I could have done with the time I had on that day. Plus, my partner was nice enough to test me on my vocab when we went to bed, which was a helpful bit of extra practice. Finally, the weekend. I had a bit more focus time where I could sit down and do some focused studying without being distracted by stray bits of real work that I had to do during the day. I had a much needed lie-in and started the day with 2 hours of studying, getting through my reviews and practicing some grammar point weaknesses in my language journal. My intent after that was to stop for lunch at a cafe and work through my textbook, and then continue onwards to the gym where I could run on the treadmill and do some listening practice. I did work through my textbook in the cafe and in fact finished all of the lessons. The only thing I had left was the practice exam in the back, which I intended to do in some nice peace and quiet in the internet cafe the next day. However, while I planned on studying in the gym, I did notice that for the first time in maybe a year, the weather was considered good for running, and the pollution seemed low enough that it wasn't going to fuck with my asthma at all. Since I don't take my phone with me when I run outside, I wouldn't be able to do any studying whilst running outside, but that was a sacrifice that needed to be made. Breaks are important, that's my reason. Breaks are important. So instead of heading off to the gym, I headed home, did another hour of studying, and headed out for a quick 7k in the park. Not as far as I would have liked, but it's a compromise. The run refreshed my brain a bit, so I pushed myself back into some grammar. I did more reviews on Bunpro and did some extra sentences on grammar points that I got wrong, which took a lot of mental work for me. Grammar studies are the worst. Studying kanji is just so much easier. After about 3 hours of practicing grammar and complaining to Jojo about it, I found a really useful video on conjugations which recommended the website Don's Conjugation Drills. Absolute godsend that was. I'll leave it linked in the description if you want to take a look, but I've never heard of it before and holy moly it was useful. Additionally, I found another website with a fantastic guide for the difference between transitive and intransitive verbs, with patterns to help tell them apart, which I will also link. I managed to get more grammar practice done after dinner too, so this was certainly the most productive day so far. Thank you, weekend, for dedicated study time. On day 6, I did already have a dinner reservation. In typical living in Tokyo fashion, this was the most free weekend I would have for a while, so it was still the best week to do this challenge. I can always do some studying on the train. I also planned to go to the internet cafe for a bit so I could complete the practice exam in the textbook in quiet. I love living with my partner. He has been so helpful doing the housework while I'm doing this challenge, but there is no private space in our apartment, and I fear that I may need quiet for doing a practice exam. So I cycled all the way to the internet cafe, about 30 minutes away, and sat down to do the mock test in the book. It was 5 questions long. It was not much of a mock test. In the end, I did actually get 1 question wrong, but it was a silly error and I completed the questions in 10 minutes. In a real exam setting, I probably would have looked over them again. Not that that's an excuse, should have done that in the first place, but I've learned from that. I figured with the rest of my internet cafe time, having 3 hours there, I'd make the most of a computer that can handle Bunpro better than Jojo's shitty little work laptop, and focus on some grammar practice. I also had lunch there whilst watching a grammar video, since I've never actually tried the food, despite it being where I go to do all of my video editing. I had about an hour after getting home in which to practice some grammar before heading out for my first Sunday roast in nearly 2 years. It's so hard to find a proper British roast in Japan, and it's not cheap. Finally, when I got back home, I did a bit of listening practice, realising that I had actually ended up neglecting listening for grammar a little bit. Listening to people talking is difficult enough in English, let alone in another language. Day 7 was unfortunately yet another not a great start. I tried studying on the train, doing a listening mock test on my phone, but had to stop and focus on not being sick, or else I would have to get off the train and be late for work. The busy trains do not agree with me as a rural-raised little guy. In the morning, I again had a lot of real work to do, so worked on my vocab between tasks and classes. This is probably why I don't practice listening as regularly as vocab, because it requires dedicated and uninterrupted practice. Most of my studying time is in short gaps between actual work. I need more dedicated study time in my daily life that lasts longer than 5 minutes. During lunch, I stopped at a cafe and had a dedicated 20 minutes in peace and quiet, and found this absolutely brilliant playlist on YouTube, which I'm mad I only discovered on the last day. My afternoon was also unusually busy for a Monday, so I only had 30 minutes at my desk to finish off my reviews before heading out. I planned to go to the gym after work to do some more listening practice on the treadmill, so at least I had found an excellent playlist to do so with. It was also not until day 7 that I realised 71% is actually a good score. You would probably pass with a 71%. I was under the impression that you needed like 90% this whole time, so that revelation kind of made this whole week feel a little bit pointless. But day 7 now, we've made it to the end of the week. We are finishing this. I still want to see how much I can improve on that final test. I spent about an hour on the treadmill going through the playlist that I had found, until I was getting about 9 out of every 10, which I feel like is a pretty good improvement from 70% at the beginning of this challenge. Finally, test day. In hindsight, I did not control for this very well, and if I ever do this type of thing again, I'm going to do a better job at controlling the variables and making an actual plan. This whole thing was a bit chaotic and unplanned, but I think it needed to be, because at the start of this, I didn't even know enough about the JLPTs to make a proper plan, really. Due to another busy day at work, which I had more than usual this week, I wasn't able to do any last-minute cramming before the test, but I don't think it would have helped me anyway, to be frank. I did also add a rule on the listening portion. Someone mentioned that in the JLPT exams, you only get to listen to the audio once, which is horrifying to me. I didn't know this when doing my practice test, so I listened a bunch of times. Oops, I should have checked that. The only time I listened to an audio more than once this time around was when a particularly loud co-worker was talking near me, which I feel like that's fair enough. You don't do your JLPT exam in an office environment usually. I really should have done this in the internet cafe. Despite the new rules being added, the test went notably smoother this time. I breezed through the kanji section, but that was no different to last time. The struggle is always at the fill-in-the-blanks context questions. I had a more difficult time with that than I had with the kanji, but I knew what I was doing, and I understood all the sentences, so that's an improvement from last time. The grammar section was the most notable improvement. I did a lot of work studying grammar, and I think it paid off, as I was much more confident going through this section this time. The listening, however, was still a struggle. I do think all the practice questions I'd been through helped, but only being able to listen to the audio once was painful. Plus, questions got real ambiguous. The literal second question, for example, said that the photo was not taken at morning or noon. Like, okay, but that photo in the dark could mean sunrise, or it could mean sunset. The light one could be morning or afternoon? Am I just being stupid? Is it obvious? That just feels very ambiguous for the test, and I have no idea. Let me know if I'm being stupid. Finally, the results. This ended up being quite the improvement, actually. I'm a little disappointed in the listening portion, but I guess with the added only listen once rule, it was bound to be more difficult. But the grammar. That's a 40% increase. We've gone from grammar and reading being my worst portion at 60% to my best at 100%. And I only got one question wrong in the vocab too. Overall, this is a shit way to learn a language. A little work over a longer period of time is going to help you a lot more than just grinding for the short term, but I honestly think I needed a short boost like this. It forced me to pay attention to what actually needed doing to improve my JLPT score in the short term, and clearly it really did help me. I might do this again if I ever find myself in a rut studying for the N4, so let me know if you'd be interested in seeing a video on that too. Next time it will be a lot more controlled. I'll make a real plan in advance so things don't go off the rails. I'll do double housework the week before so I don't feel guilty for leaving all of the housework to my partner during that week. Basically, if I do this again, I'll be a lot more prepared next time. But thank you for watching this first half-baked attempt at a challenge like this. If you've ever taken a JLPT exam and have any advice, please do share, and if you haven't and you want advice, ask away in the comments. Maybe there is someone else watching this video who will be able to answer any questions. Either way, thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.